We are back for our UFC 326 predictions for the BMF Championship in Las Vegas, Nevada this weekend. It is the rematch. 11 years in the making. Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira, they will do it yet again. Their initial matchup back in 2015 from Saskatchewan, Canada. A first-round TKO victory for Max Holloway. Well, technically, yes, a first-round TKO for Holloway. Oliveira gets injured in the first round, a shoulder injury, 99 seconds into the fight. Holloway walks away with the victory. Now, after both men have won world championships, Holloway at 145, Oliveira at 155, they will do battle once again, this time, though, for the BMF championship title. It's cool. Main event spot, Holloway, Oliveira. We'll find out who the current BMF is, even though technically the lineage technically of the BMF championship follow Masvidal, so shouldn't that have gone from Masvidal to Usman to Edwards to Belal to JDM to Islam? Whatever, the BMF Championship, Holloway Oliveira this weekend from Las Vegas, Nevada. We've got 13 fights on this card. I'm still waiting for the cool co-main event the UFC's announcing for this card, right? They promised us one, TBD versus TBD. Oh, it's just Caio Borralho and Reinier de Ridder, even though that was already announced at the time. The new fight we got was Drew Dober, Michael Johnson. It's a great fight, but wasn't the crazy fight we were supposed to get. It's okay. UFC 327 in Miami is absolutely loaded, so I can't wait for that in about a month's time. Regardless, folks, before we get into the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more UFC content here on the channel. On Thursday, we're going to have our best bets for this UFC 326 card as well. Last week in Mexico, we had a great night, 10-3. All I can say is Brandon Moreno should retire. No, but maybe. He's not a top 10 fighter anymore. I'd argue he's not even top 15 anymore. I get it, Kavanaugh's going to be really good someday, but man, Moreno looked horrible in that fight. Again, hit that subscribe button down below for more. Main channel, Greedo plays daily college basketball and NBA best bets. Let's do it. Now, first of 13 fights tonight or on Saturday, we kick things off in the light heavyweight division. It is the UFC debut of Luke Fernandez coming off a Contender Series victory over Rafael Pergentino. He gets his first UFC outing against one Rodolfo Bellato. Fernandez in his first UFC bout finds himself as a pretty sizable favorite at minus 235. And here's Bellato coming in now to his fourth UFC bout after, well, an eventful start to his UFC career. He had a win over Ihor Porteria in his first fight after winning on the Contender Series, then had a draw against Jimmy Crute in Australia, and then there was the infamous bout he had against Paul Craig, where Bellato is a massive favorite, mind you, in that fight. He's supposed to beat Paul Craig, and I have to talk about it because it's the career of Bellato. Probably winning the first round against Paul Craig. Craig hits him with, maybe not. Craig actually probably should have won that first round. Probably did. Anyways, Craig clips him barely with an up kick. Bellato feels it on his shin. It's in Atlanta last summer. Looks at the referee, says, "Hey, what the hell?" And then, goes out like he's unconscious. Because he fakes it, obviously. He wasn't actually out. I had to mimic that because it's the first thing that always pops in my mind, when Rodolfo Bellato fights. He's since fought in Australia against Navajo Sterling. Expectedly, he lost. Sterling couldn't get him out of there, but he lost by decision. Now, Luke Fernandez is a different type of fighter than Navajo Sterling, I will say. Sterling, again, has some power in his shots, but as we've seen in the UFC, that power punching guy's gone away. He's a point fighter now in the UFC. Remind you of anyone? Carlos Ulberg? No, Ulberg's gotten his fair share of finishes. We'll see how he fares against Prohashka next month. But anyways, right? Sterling beats Bellato to a decision, and it's a decisive decision, right? It's not competitive. I thought Sterling won every single round. I don't know how one judge gave a round to Bellato. That was a pretty easy 3-0 for Sterling in that fight. And Bellato now is 1-1-1 with one no contest in the UFC. I'm telling you, I think the UFC's almost done with him. First fight of the night here on a pay-per-view card, obviously in the prelims. I think they want him out of here, and I think they want Fernandez to knock him out. I think Fernandez is 100% capable of doing so. Now, I will say, Bellato does throw hard when he actually decides to go, but he has been knocked down already in 2 fights in the UFC. Yeah, he won one of these fights, but beat Ihor Potieria in a fight where he got knocked down earlier in the bout, came back to win that fight in San Antonio, and then he did have the fight against Jimmy Crute. Crute knocked him down. Obviously, it ended up being a majority draw. But when you're fighting Luke Fernandez, you can expect a guy who's going to come out there and looking to knock your head off. That's just how he fights. Former CFFC champion, defended the belt a couple times, won the Contender Series recently by 15-second knockout. Again, the guy hits like a truck. I don't know what his long-term future is in the UFC, but this is a guy who has a decent ground game, but is looking to knock your head off. He's a power puncher, and he puts everything into every strike he throws. I believe he was originally a wrestler who got into MMA, I think, but really has really come to be a very solid power puncher and a guy, again, who just hits like an absolute truck. There's a reason he's at minus 235 in his UFC debut. It's because Bellato, I don't want to say he's looked slow, but I mean, he did look slow against Sterling. That's just because, again, Navajo Sterling, really good striker, good point fighter. It's tough to, go first against Sterling. But we haven't seen a great performance out of Bellato since the Ihor Potieria fight. And yes, he wins the bout. It's a back and forth one. Again, you like the grit out of Bellato after getting dropped in the second round. He loses the first round. He's en route to losing the second round, but comes back and obviously gets on top of Potieria and just, beats his head in to win the round or win the fight. Since then, we have not seen much success out of Bellato. Again, having the draw against Krupp and then having the weird Paul Craig incident where it's just a layup for Bellato to win. Craig continuously had lost fights in the UFC, and even after the Bellato fight, Craig went on to lose to Modestas Bukauskas by first round TKO. It was a layup fight for Bellato to really catapult his UFC career, and he didn't take advantage, and obviously faked an upkick, we can say. And obviously the UFC, they punished him by giving him Navajo Sterling. And now this is a make or break fight for his UFC career. Go out and beat Luke Fernandez. I don't think he survives with a power puncher. I think Bellato's got a decent striking game, and again, maybe technically sound-wise, he's better than Fernandez, but when Fernandez presses forward and Fernandez looks to knock his head off, I just don't know if Bellato's going to have an answer. He struggles against guys, again, who go first on him and walk forward against him. We saw that in the multiple fights he's had against Vitor Petrino. I know the first one was like a 25-second fight in Petrino's first ever MMA fight, but we saw it in the second fight where Petrino fought Bellato on the Contender Series. Petrino goes first, knocks out Bellato in the second round in that fight. He's very hittable, and again, Bellato, when he goes first, is not bad, but we've seen him just be second to throw in most of his fights in the UFC, and that's why he's 1-1-1 with one no contest, and he's been knocked down already multiple times in the promotion. I got to go Luke Fernandez to win this fight, and I think he will go first and knock out Bellato in the first round and likely end Bellato's tenure in the UFC. Luke Fernandez gets the night off with a bang, first round knockout again against Adolfo Bellato. On to our second fight of the night, we move to a matchup in the featherweight division. Gaston Bolanos, the Dream Killer, takes on the Korean Tiger in Jeong-Young Lee. Bolanos with an ugly record of 8-5, we can say, taking on the 11-3 South Korean fighter in Jeong-Young Lee. It's a fight that obviously Lee's expected to win, and you can see that right away, obviously with the odds, but also with the records. Obviously, Bolanos doesn't have a pretty record per se. He's coming off a loss to Kang Lee in his last fight. Lee went out there I think it was Des Moines, Iowa, submitted Bolanos in the second round. Bolanos does have a victory over Cortavius Romius in the UFC. Before that, lost to Marcus McGee and has a win over Aaron Phillips. Now, again, I will give Bolanos credit. He's 2-2 in the promotion. It was an interesting signing when they went out and got him in the first place because he was coming off of winning in Bellator, but he was a 6-3 guy who had, I think, a 3-2 record under the Bellator banner. Comes in, beats Aaron Phillips, who was never a high-level UFC guy. Loses to Marcus McGee, which is obviously expected. By the way, where has Marcus McGee been since he lost to Piotr Jan last summer? Piotr Jan's the champion now, and Marcus McGee went a full 3 rounds with them and won a round. Where is Marcus McGee? Can anyone tell me? I don't know. Bolanos since then beats Cortavius Romius. Again, good victory, but how good is Cortavius Romius really? 0-2 in the UFC. I doubt he gets another chance because he missed weight in his last fight and got into the UFC after beating an old Michael Imperiato who really didn't even deserve to be in the Contender Series in the first place. And Romius also lost his first Contender Series bout against Ramon Tavares. I just don't know how good Romius is. So again, good on Bolanos for winning the bout, but it takes him 15 minutes, and then he loses to Kang Lee by second round sub. We've seen Bolanos beat in the wrestling game in pretty much every single fight he's already had so far in the UFC. Obviously, McGee dominated him on the feet, but Aaron Phillips looked to wrestle Bolanos and was successful. Cortavius Romius looked to wrestle and looked to get to the hips of Bolanos often. Kang Lee obviously exploited that and got the submission in the second round. I mean, Bolanos has a 42% takedown defense rate so far in the UFC. That's not really what Jeong-Young Lee does, so we shall see, because it's the guy who is 2-2 in the UFC, coming off of back-to-back L's to both Daniel Santos and Hyder Emil. Came into the UFC with victories over Blake Bilder and Yiza. We shall see. Again, Jeong-Young Lee, what I want to say, I don't think he's not a what's the right way to put this? He's not a boring grappler. He's not a guy who's just going to lay on you. Like, he's looking to advance positioning, and we've seen a lot of fights with Young Lee so far where there have been a bunch of scrambles, starting in his road to the UFC run, and obviously, we've seen that so far in the UFC as well, but it's been back-to-back L's. It's been a Hyder Mill loss and losing to Blake Builder as well. The Daniel Santos fight, a unanimous decision L, and now again coming into this fight against Bolanos as a 2-2 fighter in the promotion. We shall see. Again, Young Lee got out wrestled against Santos, got out wrestled against Yiza, and we've seen fun scrambles out the guy, but he hasn't really been the most aggressive wrestler, except for the Blake Builder fight, where he was successful in doing so. But I'm just curious what the approach is for Young Lee in this fight. Is he going to go wrestle heavy? Because again, a lot of his fights have been scramble based, and sure, he should be able to out-scramble Bolanos in this spot, or are we going to see Young Lee strike a position where he was kind of forced into in the Santos fight, because Santos was so aggressive in the takedowns. Same with the Yiza fight too, where Young Lee wins. I don't know about that scorecard. It's not a great fight, and Yiza's controlling, but it's like that Moreno-Kavanaugh fight, right? Like, Moreno has control, but he's not doing any damage with it. It's interesting. Again, I don't think Young Lee, I'll tell you this, I don't think he's all that great. I don't think he should be a minus 255 favorite, a minus 260 favorite. I think that's kind of ridiculous. Like, again, I think he should win the bout, but he shouldn't be this big of a favorite at all. Likely, if I'm Young Lee, again, I'm wrestling. I know it's not something that has been an integral part of his game so far, but we did see a guy before entering the UFC in Lee, nothing but stoppages. As soon as he got in the UFC, it's been a lot of decisions. I mean, his entire road to UFC run, first fight was a 36-second armbar win, then he knocked a guy out in 42 seconds, then did have the contract-winning performance against Yiza, which was a split decision, but his entire career through road FC and whatnot was nothing but finishes. The UFC run has been uneventful, I will say, so far, but again, the wrestling has been a problem for him, just like the wrestling has been a problem for Bolanos. So maybe, again, we see both these guys say, all right, hell with the wrestling, let's go ahead and strike. I'm 50-50 on that, man. I think Young Lee wins, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bolanos catches him. Bolanos hits hard, I will say that. It's just, again, he's not the greatest striker at the same time, and he's 33. You're 8-5 at 33. I don't really know what your future is. I think Young Lee wins the all-around game here. If this was a pure boxing fight, maybe I'd give it to Bolanos. But again, it's MMA. You have different facets of the game. You might see, again, Young Lee look to wrestle. Obviously, he can kickbox here. Hesitantly, I'm going to go with the Korean Tiger. I will tell you, I am not confident at all in this pick. Bolanos, again, an ugly record at 8-5. But again, Young Lee, same UFC record as him. Don't love it either way. I'm going to go with the Korean Tiger to win by unanimous decision, but I would not bet on this one in the slightest. Give me Young Lee by decision against Gaston Bolanos. On to our third fight of the night, we go to the light heavyweight division as Rafael Tobias takes on Nurgozhay, again at 205 pounds. It's been a rough UFC career so far for Nurgozhay, as he is still yet to find that first victory. Back-to-back L's to start his tenure. It was kind of an interesting signing when they got Nurgozhay, but they signed him off the Contender Series, where he looked good on the Contender, but then gets the Brennison Hibeto fight in his UFC debut, gets submitted as a minus 400 favorite. He got Kimura'd, and he missed weight in that fight on top of that, too. Weighed in at 210.5 for a 205 bout. Yikes. And then ran into Uran Saltitabliev, I always butcher his name, over in China, in Macau. It's an even money bout, and Uran submits him with an Ezekiel choke in the very first round, and Dayar looked like he had nothing to do on the ground. I don't know, he looks lost on the ground, man. That's just what I get out of Nurgozhay. You get him down, and yeah, he's going to struggle. Rafael Tobias, a guy who has some really good BJJ, coming off of a submission victory on the Contender Series over Jair de Oliveira, got his contract in September. It's a guy, again, who can strike too, but obviously the pathway of least resistance in your UFC debut has to come in the grappling against a guy who has, let's just be honest, looked lost on the ground so far in his UFC career, and obviously is a primary striker. And we've seen Nurgozhay, right? Some nice kicks. That's how he got his UFC contract. Knocked out Emiliano Sordi en route to fighting on the Contender Series, winning a bunch of fights in Eagle FC. Don't get me wrong. Had a really good run over there. He was 10-0 when he came into the UFC. I don't want to call him fraudulent because he beat some decent guys in Eagle FC, was the Eagle FC champion, beat Sordi. He's coming to the UFC and he's been easily exploited with the grappling. I think it's just a case of no real good wrestler / Sambo fighter ever fought him in Eagle FC, just at least to that level. And again, Brennison Hibeto went out there and subbed him, and then Uran Saltabliev gets him down, and obviously he gets the Ezekiel choke. Nurgozhay has looked bad on the ground so far. Again, he's more comfortable in the striking range, but Rafael Tobias is a fighter who's not going to play around with that. I mean, that's already, again, no matter who Tobias fights, he's going to look to grapple. And now against a guy who's shown obvious holes in that grappling game, why wouldn't Tobias just submit him very quickly? Guys, I'm going to go Rafael. His nickname's Bipolar? Well, I hope he's not bipolar going into this fight. I'm going to take Rafael Tobias to win the fight by first round submission. And this is a guy who's 22 years old, coming out of Curitiba, Brazil. Very young fighter. 14-1 as a pro, only loss comes back in LFA back in 2023, but has been nothing but finishes since that point with the exception of one bout. And again, the first round sub over Jair de Oliveira, who's a fellow Brazilian guy who, I'll be honest, was not impressed with watching Jair de Oliveira's tape going into the Contender Series. He had been nothing but bums, and I was kind of surprised he even got a shot in the first place. But I will say this, right? Nurgozhay is a very low-level grappler. I'm telling you. He's a good striker, and if this was straight kickboxing against Tobias, he'd have a really good chance to win. It's unless Nurgozhay lands a kick early in this bout and stiffs Tobias, which I just highly doubt happens, because Tobias, not a bad striker, obviously a much better grappler than obviously kickboxer, but as long as Tobias is just able to get into range and get that takedown, obviously, maybe, push him back against the fence, obviously trip him, or obviously just get a straight takedown, I don't think Nurgozhay is going to have a chance. He has not shown great takedown defense so far in the UFC, and again, the grappling is a very obvious problem. This is his third chance in the promotion, again, after back-to-back submission L's, and I would imagine Tobias is going to get him in this third and likely last try. It's just a product, I believe, of a guy who was not fully tested on the regional scene. And yes, the names weren't bad. And again, the big win over Emiliano Sordi is great, even though that's an old Emiliano Sordi. If we're being honest, Sordi was 33 in that fight. And Sordi is coming off a victory now over Tom Breese, and he did knock out Zach Pounga in karate combat. But regardless, right, it's an end of the career Emiliano Sordi, right, former PFL champion back in 2019. He was never fully tested in that grappling range against anybody that's that great. And he got into the UFC, and obviously that's the difference in fighting regional guys over in Eagle FC in Kazakhstan and UAE Warriors to this. So, Rafael Tobias, pathway of least resistance. It's one thing to say, he's just going to go out here and sub him if it's any fighter, but now it's a guy who clearly can't wrestle / grapple / has any jiu-jitsu in his back pocket. This should be an easy first-round submission for Rafael Tobias. I think he's going to take Nurgozhay down. I don't even know, is Nurgozhay going to go to his back to trying to get up? I don't know. I'm going to go arm triangle submission here for the Brazilian and Rafael Tobias to pick up an easy first-round sub over the Kazakhstani Dair Nurgozhay. On to our fourth fight of the night, we move to the flyweight division as China's Sumudaerji, even though he trains at Team Alpha Male over in Sacramento, California. Where does Faber keep getting these Chinese guys? I feel like his entire camp now is just Chinese fighters. That's probably Song Yadong's doing. Obviously, Yadong, right, took a chance. Comes from, I'm pretty sure it's the story, came from China to go to Sacramento, told Uriah Faber, I want to fight, and he's been there ever since. Anyways, Team Alpha Male / China's own Sumudaerji takes on Jesus Aguilar. Should be a competitive bout, I would think. Mudaerji a -245 favorite, yet he is technically the underdog on Tapology in terms of people picking the fight. Aguilar, I think, has 56% of the voters. Just shows you where potentially the public's at in a fight like this. Two flyweights who are both coming off of victories. Mudaerji with the big victory over Kevin Borjas. Borjas almost pulled off a huge victory yesterday against Emmanuel Rodrigues. Had Emmanuel Rodrigues in a world of hurt early in that first round, but then eventually got knocked out in his own right in the second round. But Mudaerji was able to go out and beat Borralho by unanimous decision. Borjas by decision. We're going to see Borralho later in the video. Jesus Aguilar coming off a victory over Luis Garul, who one of the worst UFC fighters in history, with all due respect. Guy was not ready for the UFC level at 32 years of age. Garul did nothing but get dominated in his UFC tenure, losing to Picasso, Ode Osborne, Aguilar, and Coria. Yeah, it was a brutal run for Garul. But Aguilar is coming off a victory over him, as Aguilar is now 4-2 in the UFC. What's his best win? That's the problem. Sumudaerji's been in and out of the top 15. I don't think he's not in the top 15 anymore. But he's fought some big names. And what is his best win? I can't really tell you that either. Is it Mitroposo? Is it Borjas? I don't know. But Aguilar hasn't fought the top competition with the exception of Tetsuro Taira. But I'm telling you, his wins do feel really low level with all due respect. Shannon Ross, I talked about Garul being really bad. Oh, Shannon Ross was horrible in the UFC. Shannon Ross was a punching bag in the UFC that whenever the UFC wanted a flyweight on the roster to get a win over a guy, over anybody, or a knockout win, you'd go fight Shannon Ross. He didn't have the chin. They signed him off a loss in the Contender Series because, he was just so tough and we had a fight card in Australia, and they'd roll Shannon Ross out there, just get knocked out in every single fight he had in the promotion just because they needed another Australian on the card. So obviously Aguilar knocked him out in 17 seconds, but that's one of his wins. Stuart Nickel, Stuart Nickel has done nothing in the UFC, and they're giving him Alessandro Costa? Why? Okay, so I assume Alessandro Costa is going to beat Stuart Nickel. That fight's happening in April. That's one of Aguilar's other victory. How about Mateus Mendoza, who's 0-3 in the UFC and has been cut since his loss to Aguilar as well. Now, don't get me wrong, Medarji's wins aren't that great either. Borjas, Raposo, Zaruk Adeshev, Malcolm X. Gordon, Andrei Sokomtov. Yeah, he isn't one of the best guys either, but I like Medarji here, man. Medarji overwhelmed Borjas in their fight in China. It was a one-sided beatdown, and I assume Medarji. He made Borjas look horrible on the feet, and Borjas obviously got knocked out yesterday, but fought a pretty solid first round against Emmanuel Rodrigues until obviously went south for him. Medarji took on Mitch Raposo, completely stifled Raposo on the feet. Obviously, Raposo was very wrestle-heavy in that fight, but Medarji dominates it in the striking range. And I will say this about Sumudaerji. Unlike Jesus Aguilar, who, yes, has fought the #1 contender in Tatsuro Taira, Medarji has a clear path and a consistent path of fighting the top guys. Well, Charles Johnson, Matt Schnell, and Tim Elliott. Still don't know how he lost to Matt Schnell. He had Matt Schnell knocked out, and he still found a way to lose by submission. I'm going to hesitantly go Sumudaerji here. This is going to be a striking fight. I honestly don't expect either guy to shoot a takedown. We know Medarji's not going to do that. I highly doubt Aguilar is going to. Aguilar's losses, right, are Rafael Estevam and Tatsuro Taira. And we have yet to see Aguilar purely, outstruck in the UFC. But who has he fought? Mendoza, Ross, and Garul. I wouldn't bet on this fight either, but I do think Medarji's going to get the better of him here. I will say this too. I don't want to read too much into the odds, but it does mean something when Medarji's this big of a favorite in a fight that I believe should be a toss-up. And I'm not going to go out here and say, well, I'm hunting value here. I'm going to take Aguilar. No, that's for the best bets video. That'll be on Thursday. We hunt value in those. I'm looking for pure winners here. I'm going to take Medarji. It's a fight that I am split on, I will say. So I would not bet on it in the first place. But there's a reason Medarji's at -240. That's all I'm going to say. There's a reason he's at that. Yes, he's the more experienced UFC guy. He's had, some fights against some top 10 fighters. But there's a reason he's at that, and Aguilar's at +190, and both guys, they're both strikers. Medarji is huge for the weight class, I will say. He's 5'8", feels like he's more 5'9", 5'10". He's got a 72-inch reach, and that also, I will say, is going to create a massive problem for Aguilar. Aguilar's 5'4", 62-inch reach. Medarji 5'8", 72-inch reach. Really, I believe he's 5'9", 5'10". That's another massive problem. But again, too, just in a straight striking battle, you got to consider the height and reach is going to play a difference, and as well, Vegas has set the line where it's at. It makes sense when you put it all together. Medarji likely wins the fight by decision. Maybe we see Aguilar have to wrestle, but I think Medarji wins the striking battle. I'm going to take the Chinese fighter by decision. On to our next fight. We stay in the flyweight division for our fifth fight, as we've got, his nickname's Custom Made now? What? Sorry, these nicknames are throwing me off. Custom Made Cody Durden taking on the Art of the Knockout over in Nurgozhay. I'm just going to call him Tumendemberel. I know I say his last name. I'm not going to try to pronounce his first name. The Mongolian fighter in Tumendemberel takes on Cody Durden. Durden coming off 3 consecutive losses, and Tumendemberel is coming off his first win in the UFC on a fight card that wasn't technically a UFC card. Well, it was. It was promoted by the UFC, but it was a road to the UFC fight that had Bruna Brazil winning in the main event. Tumendemberel was the co-main, and he ended up getting a win, his first in the promotion, over Terrence Saturn. He wins the fight by first-round submission. Now he's taking on Cody Durden, who's been an experienced UFC guy. He's had 14 fights going into this one, but has been a loser in 5 out of his last 6 bouts. Losing by submission to Tagir Ulanbekov, getting knocked out by Bruno Silva, submitted Matt Schnell, because everyone can beat Matt Schnell, loses to Josh Van. Oddly enough, that's the only one that's not by finish. Van beat him by decision. Losing to Jose Ochoa by second-round knockout, and getting submitted by Alan Nascimento in his last fight by second round and Anaconda choke. Yeah. It's been a lot of finish losses for Durden, and I just don't like that against a guy in Tumendemberel, where if he gets fully unlocked, which I think we saw in his last fight against Terrence Saturn, and I will talk about his Carlos Hernandez fight in Macau, China back in 2024 in a second. If this guy fully gets going, he is somewhat dangerous, I will say. And don't let, again, the nickname, don't let that swing you one way or the other, the Art of the Knockout. It's a little corny, I will say, but the guy does hit hard for 125 pounds. And he does have a really good ground game too. Again, the art of the knockout's the nickname. He's got 2 knockouts ever. He's really a better grappler. Again, he's just a guy who swings hard in the feet, but it is really, from what I get out of Tumendemberel, and I know he got taken down by Carlos Fernandez, and that fight he was, basically made into just a pure striker in that one. But ultimately, Tumendemberel, I believe, still looking to wrestle in every fight that he takes. He is going to throw hard, and the guy, again, swings for the fences in every single shot he throws. But to me, I think he's doing that just to get into entry-level range with his wrestling. And you see that in the Saturn fight, right? Immediately, Tumendemberel, well, that's not immediately, but Tumendemberel in that first round gets the takedown, obviously, goes straight to the Anaconda and gets the finish. It's a difference than the first fight he had in the UFC against Hernandez, where, he's beating Hernandez in the feet, I believe, right? Damage-based scoring, I think Tumendemberel is doing a really great job. I don't know if I can, warrant him the decision, but he wins the first round, and then Hernandez just turns into a grappler, and Tumendemberel, it felt like in the third round, was just running out of steam. Something that I don't think is going to play too big of a factor in this fight, because I think he's going to get Durden out of there. I will say, Durden's biggest advantage in this fight has to be his cardio. We know that's what Durden has. He's a, decent wrestler, a good wrestler, who can definitely push a hard 15 minutes. His best run of his career is when he went on a 4-fight winning streak, beating JP Bays, Carlos Mota, Charles Johnson, and Jake Hadley. That was a great 4-fight run before, obviously, all this losing has, come recently for Durden. But that's got to be his biggest advantage in this fight. He's got to push Tumendemberel into deep waters. He's got to drag him into deep waters, because I don't know what Tumendemberel is at late in fights, because he does just go for the knockout / goes for a finish early in bouts. And we've seen that again time in and time out with Tumendemberel, and we saw him in that third round against Carlos Hernandez. The output wasn't even crazy in the first 2 rounds. He just kind of slowed down entirely in the third against Hernandez, again losing that fight by split decision. I think you can make the argument Tumendemberel still wins, because again, he's headhunting in that third round, and you can say damage-wise he's doing more than Hernandez, but whatever, they gave it to Carlos Hernandez. I think, again, Tumendemberel probably should have won the fight, but it is what it is. It's close. I go either way. Let me clarify. But Tumendemberel's very, hard-hitting striking style, with accompanied by the fact that he can grapple and has decent BJJ, makes it tough on Durden, in my opinion. A fighter in Cody Durden who has just struggled as of late, right? The Ochoa fight in Atlanta, loses. He is a good first-round wrestling. He's in his home state, and then obviously gets knocked out as soon as the second round starts. Nascimento gets the submission on him. Durden's the one, being the aggressor in terms of a grappling and wrestling range, but obviously Nascimento subs him. Van's just an all-out war on the feet. Obviously, that's the Josh Van type fight. Bruno Silva, TKO Durden. I think there's multiple pathways for Tumendemberel here. The one pathway for Durden, which I will say is not a horrible path for him, just drag this dude into deep waters. I think if I'm Durden, I'm wrestling Tumendemberel. I know his jiu-jitsu is really good, but I'm trying to push this guy and make it certain that, okay, you're going to have to go 15 minutes to beat me. You're not going to finish me out there. I think Tumendemberel's going to. I'm going to go knockout for Tumendemberel. I know this submission's the hot pick, but I'm going to go knockout because of Durden being kind of chinny at this point of his career. I think Tumendemberel is going to drop him, and instead of looking for a sub, I think he's going to just keep on punching. And I don't really see Tumendemberel getting the fight down with the takedown. I don't think he's able to do that against Durden. I think he's going to drop him and get him down with a knockdown. Tumendemberel is going to win this fight out of Mongolia. He will beat Cody Durden, and he will do it. I'm going to go in the second round. I'm going to go a Tumendemberel second round knockout victory over the American and Cody Durden. We move on now to the featherweight division, as we've got Alberto Montes making his UFC debut. The nickname is The Promise. What are these nicknames on this card? The Promise? Alberto The Promise Montes taking on Ricky Turcios in a bout for Turcios that has been shuffled around a little bit. Well, he's dealt with multiple opponents recently. I was supposed to fight Cameron Smotherman earlier this year. Smotherman pulls out because he fainted after making weight, or failing to make weight, and obviously Bisping had some interesting comments. Bisping wasn't trying to offend anybody, but anyways, Bisping, oh, you gotta make weight, pal, you gotta make weight, buddy, and then Smotherman collapses right in front of Bisping. Anyways, Turcios' fight obviously gets pushed back. He doesn't have an opponent, so now he gets Montes instead. Obviously, the Smotherman fight was going to be difficult in its own right for Turcios, but now you get Montes. I don't know. It's a different style of fight. It's an incredibly different style of fight. I would argue this is a more difficult fight for Turcios. Alberto Montes is not going to play around. He's looking to take Turcios down. He's going to look to submit him. I think. I believe so. And I know in Montes' last fight in the Contender Series, he was actually the one striking against Carlos Calderon. Calderon's the one looking to wrestle. Calderon's looking to take him down. I believe that's more matchup wise. It was just more the fact that Montes saw, okay, this guy, this guy's a lesser striking game than I have. He's more dependent on the grappling than I am, because again, Montes is very dependent on grappling, but he has a decent striking game to accompany that. And his fight against Calderon in the Contender Series, Calderon is dead set on trying to take him down. He's dead set in trying to get that fight into the grappling range, where Montes is more than comfortable striking with him. Calderon does get a takedown on him, but Montes, as that fight hits the mat, is able to submit Calderon because, again, he did have better jiu-jitsu than the guy, but he was comfortable in the striking range in the first place. I think we see kind of a similar fight here, not to the point where I believe Turcios is going to be shooting on Montes like Calderon was. I don't think we're going to see that. I don't know why Turcios would do so, but to the point where I believe Montes is going to be comfortable in the striking range, and then he's going to decide at some point in the bout when Turcios kind of starts to turn it up striking wise, okay, hold on, I'm a better grappler than this guy, I have better jiu-jitsu than this guy, and I can take him down and I can likely submit him as well. But Turcios has just struggled so much in the grappling range recently in fights where, again, I think Montes should be able to have it pretty easily if he decides to go down there. Turcios has gotten beat grappling and wrestling in every fight he's had so far in the UFC. That's just the truth. Brady Hiestand in the Ultimate Fighter finale fight, which is a really good fight back in August of 21. Turcios wins it. He knocks down Hiestand. I had high hopes for both those guys after that fight, honestly, but I mean, it was in all fairness, looking back at it now, it was a very weak class on the Ultimate Fighter that year. But, Turcios goes out there and knocks down Hiestand. Hiestand, though, is the one wrestling, and Hiestand has his moments because of the, explosive takedowns he's able to get on Turcios. By the way, where is Brady Hiestand? 3-1 in the UFC, has not fought since June of 2024. Does this guy fight anymore? His only loss in the UFC is Turcios. He hasn't lost since that bout. He's 26. Where is Brady Hiestand? Very, young prospect still. Anyways, Turcios beats Hiestand by split decision, and then the A-Man Zahabi fight. Now, looking back at it now, knowing what we know about Zahabi and the success he's had, all right, not horrible, but it's just a weird fight at Turcios. He's doing this the entire fight. He's got his hand out like this. He's trying to fight like a samurai or some crap. It's ridiculous. And he loses the bout, and he's really never regained his momentum. Yes, he beat Kevin Natividad. Okay, Natividad does a decent job in that fight. They give it to Turcios, but I don't know. It's a competitive bout. Natividad is the one being the aggressor late in the fight. He's chasing after Turcios. He knocks down Turcios in the third. He's out wrestling Turcios. They give it to Ricky, though, barely. And then they reward him. Okay, go fight Raul Rosas. Rosas easily submits him. And then Bernardo Sapaj beats Turcios as well. He's out wrestling Turcios in the limited scrambles they have. And he knocks down Turcios and beats Turcios in the striking range as well. That's to my point. I think Montes can win this fight in multiple ways. But obviously, again, the easiest path for him is with the grappling. I think he'll be comfortable striking with Turcios because of the way, I watch Turcios. If I'm fighting Turcios, I'm not concerned with this guy beating me on the feet. He's unconventional, I will say, but he's not the fastest and he doesn't hit the hardest. So Montes should be more than comfortable in his first UFC bout with a guy like Turcios on the feet. On the ground, I think he's got to know he's better than Ricky Turcios. So I think there might be somewhat of a feeling out process before Montes does end up shooting, because I think he's going to get stuck in a striking game where he's like, okay, I can likely win here. And you might not even see Montes take down Turcios in that first round. I think his corner is going to remind him, okay, hey, you're a way better grappler than this guy. You're not winning as much as you think you are in the first round. Go out there and wrestle him and get him out of there. That was a very descriptive way of how I think this fight's going to go, but I legitimately think that's how it's going to go. I think Montes is going to see success in that first round, but I think his bigger success is going to be wrestling Turcios and out-grappling him and obviously submitting him. I'm going to go second round sub for Alberto Montes. I think Turcios' time in the UFC is almost up now, and again, it really just all stems from that loss as a hobby. He was an entertaining prospect up until that bout where he decided, oh, I'm going to be all Zen mode now, and he hasn't fought the same since, and guys have been able to out-grapple him and outstrike him too. I'm going to go Montes in his UFC debut to submit Ricky Turcios in the second round. On to our next fight, we go to, I believe, yes, this matchup in the middleweight division, as we've got Dante Johnson getting his second fight in the UFC, not run in the UFC, his second fight in the UFC against Cody Brundage. How is Brundage back again? Brundage coming off of a loss to Cam Rouston on, I believe it was the feature fight, if I'm not mistaken, at UFC 325. Yes, the last pay-per-view. Brundage was on the card in Australia. And now he's back fighting Lockjaw, Dante Johnson at UFC 326. How does he do this? How does Brundage always pop up on these cards? Now, I know this was supposed to be Dusko Todorovic versus Dante Johnson. Should have been an interesting fight, but now Johnson gets Brundage instead. If you know what the story of Dante Johnson, I guess just in the UFC, this is a guy who came into the UFC, or at least was fighting on the regional scene at Fury and other various regional promotions at light heavyweight. He got a short or late notice call to go fight on the Contender Series at heavyweight just because they had an open spot, and he takes the fight. And he knocks out Darian Abbey in the first round, a guy who, yeah, wasn't really made for the UFC. So Johnson, again, is a big light heavyweight fighting Abbey at 265 pounds. He weighs in at 209, and yet he still knocks the guy out in 64 seconds. But he comes into the UFC and makes his debut at 185. We thought, okay, probably 205, but it was under consideration. Maybe he goes down to 85. He does it, and he beats Rodrigues Dumas by second-round submission in his first fight in the UFC. He's being the aggressor wrestling-wise, goes 3 for 3 on his takedowns. A guy who's very powerful on the feet and can knock you out, but has shown, again, a well-versed, I guess, fight style, as he's able to submit Dumas with a submission. Now he gets Cody Brundage in his second fight in the UFC. Brundage, again, coming off the loss to Cam Rouston. And this is Brundage's thing, right? He takes short notice calls. He's a company guy. The UFC obviously likes Brundage a lot, to the point where they put him on the main card of UFC 300 against Bo Nickel. They've given him big spot after big spot. I don't know why he took the Eric McConico fight back, though, in August of 2025. It was the first fight of a Fight Night prelims card. It was very random. It was Dolidze Hernandez, and the fight got announced like on the Wednesday of the card happening. It was like 4 days before the fight. I think McConico had someone pull out, so Brundage took it, and it was the first fight of the night, and Brundage was coming off of a fight in which he had the draw against Mansour Abdul Malik that got overturned, and Brundage has a lot of those, I understand, but I don't know why he took the fight, and he lost it, and then, okay, fights Rouston, loses, and now you're just on this level of, okay, always fighting prospects and likely losing. I don't think it's actually Brundage's last UFC fight. He took this on short notice. He's actually 5-7-1 in the promotion, with a win being by disqualification, and obviously having a loss overturned against Mansour Abdul Malik. He was knocked out against Abdul Razak Al Hassan, but it got overturned because of some shots to the back of the head that really never get called ever, and he was already going to lose anyways. Brundage has had a really lucky UFC career, but he's taken advantage of some opportunities. Beat Julian Marquez by knockout in a co-main event back in the Apex in March of last year on Almabaya versus Kopp. Like, he has taken advantage of these weird opportunities, and he's a company guy. He takes short notice calls, but here he's going to get knocked out, in my opinion. I don't love him fighting just, 5-4 weeks after his last bout. Rouston, again, it's a TKO on the ground, but Rouston's doing damage to Brundage. Obviously, you have to be some sort of messed up on the ground to get TKO'd, and I get it. Again, it's a stoppage from the referee, but regardless, Brundage took damage in that 9-minute fight. And for one, I don't know how great I don't know what Dante Johnson's ceiling in the UFC is, but I do know he hits like a truck, and Brundage just fought about a month ago, 5 weeks ago exactly, he fought. I'm supposed to expect he can come in on short notice and beat Dante Johnson, a guy who's shown, very, very strong dude. Physically overpowering, I think Dante Johnson's going to be against Cody Brundage. Again, just compare these two fighters. That's Dante Johnson at 185 pounds. It's not 205 Dante Johnson. That's not 205. That's 185 Dante Johnson. How does Brundage bully him on the ground? Because that would be the pathway. It's not going to happen. Striking-wise, I've seen Brundage fight really strong, hard-hitting guys before and just lose. Abdulrazak Al Hassan, yes, it got overturned, but Abdulrazak Al Hassan was going to knock him out, right? I mean, I've seen Michal Zolshachek isn't the same build as, obviously Dante Johnson, but I've seen Brundage knock down the first quite a bit, coming off back-to-back L's, and one of those to Eric McConico. Yeah, this one feels pretty obvious to me. Dante Johnson gets Brundage on short notice. Johnson wins the fight by first-round knockout, going now to 2-0 in the UFC. Brundage likely, though, will be back. I have to think he's going to get one more call. Next up, we go to the bantamweight division. Oh, boy, has Cody Garbrandt fallen. Oh, brother. Here's Cody as a plus 130 underdog to Long Xiao. Wow. That's unbelievable. See, I'm split on this fight. I'll tell you this right now, okay? I've been split on this fight since it got announced because the Cody Garbrandt that showed up against Raoni Barcelos, I've thought we've had it bad with Garbrandt at times. There is no version of Garbrandt that was worse than the one that fought Raoni Barcelos. Now, Barcelos, the title run's on, right? The title run for Barcelos continues. He's 38, but he's won 4 straight fights. He just beat Ricky Simón in November. Watch out for Barcelos, right? I mean, Talbot's being pushed to the moon. Who beat Talbot? Raoni Barcelos. So 4-fight winning streak for Barcelos. Let's get him a big time fight, all right? Let's get him a man Zahabi. Something like that. Not going to happen, obviously. Regardless, Barcelos continues to win. And yes, again, like that doesn't look as bad for Garbrandt now, but it was just the hesitancy for Garbrandt, man. It was sad to watch. It was. And yes, it is sad to, just look at Cody, man. Just what's the tattoo, bro? Like, he obviously looks like he's going through a midlife crisis. Now, the last time we said a fighter looked like he was going through a midlife crisis, it was Dan Hooker, which, anyways, knowing what we know now, I don't, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But, like, I don't think Garbrandt's on that midlife crisis. At least, I don't think so. Anyways, he looks so horrible in the Barcelos fight. He looks like, I'm like out of shape, but he looks uninterested. He looked uninterested. We've always joked Garbrandt looks like he's a GTA character, but he looked like a GTA character coming out of rehab. And there's nothing wrong with that too, but it's just like, man, he looked like crap against Barcelos. And he wins the first round. He lands 10 strikes and he wins the first round. But the second and third, after he's up 1-0, Garbrandt's doing Garbrandt things. Ready? Okay, hold on. I'm waiting. The load up the punch. All right, I'm waiting to throw. And you can tell the speed's still kind of there, but he's just so hesitant on pulling the trigger, man. It's sad to watch because Cody Garbrandt against Dominic Cruz, December of, what was that, 16 or 17? 16. That's the greatest single performance you've ever seen of a fighter, maybe in UFC history, especially in the bantamweight division. It was Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz. It's never been replicated out of Garbrandt nor anybody else. We haven't seen it since. Cody's won, 2 fights since? Oh, he won 3. He beat Brian Kelleher when the UFC did a fan contest to let one fan book a fight, and it was just a Cody Garbrandt fan that wanted him to beat Brian Kelleher, which was crazy. I respect it. Like, if I got that call, I'd be booking, I don't know, Aljamain Sterling to fight Volk, but whatever. Or what did I do? I don't know. Maybe I'd let Colby go beat someone who sucks. I don't know. Anyways, regardless, there was, again, a fan who let Brian Kelleher fight Cody Garbrandt, or Garbrandt fight Kelleher, and obviously Garbrandt knocked him out. But 2 fights since, fought Figueiredo at 300, lost, fought Raoni Barcelos, lost by unanimous decision, and now here we are against Long Xiao. The thing is, guys, Long Xiao is not even that impressive. It's just, if Long Xiao fights the fight that he usually fights, it's going to be up to Cody if he wins or not. And that sounds crazy, but hear me out. Long Xiao's like more of a volume striker from what I've seen. He's going to push forward. He's going to be the aggressor. He's a 1-2 UFC fighter. Lost in the road to the UFC finals against Chang Ho Lee, then beat Quang Lee by knockout, and then lost to Su Young Yu in his last fight. In an okay fight. Again, Long Xiao, I would say, is the aggressor, but Yu's landing more, and Yu wins rounds 1 and 2. I don't know. Not a great scorecard, though. Long Xiao could have definitely won that fight. But again, Long Xiao's going to walk forward, and it's going to be up to, okay, can Cody counter him? And I think that's why the UFC made this fight, because stylistically, actually, it's not a bad fight for Cody. If Cody can be Cody and actually let go of the hand and throw a counter, I don't know, like Kelleher, like the Sun style fight, like every single strike he landed against Dominic Cruz, if he can just, finally throw something, Xiao's going to walk forward. And I'll tell you, if Garbrandt's not going to pull the trigger, yes, Xiao's going to walk him down the entire fight, and Long Xiao is going to, walk him back up against the fence and start unloading. If Garbrandt eventually throws, he should knock this guy out. Just the way I watch Long Xiao fight, he's hittable. He's more than hittable. It's a fight that is tailor-made for Cody Garbrandt to win. It's just, obviously Vegas doesn't expect him to do it, but you know what? I do. I'm taking Cody Garbrandt second round knockout. Oh man, I could regret this heavily. I just feel like Xiao, and what I've seen out of him, he's going to overextend. He throws a lot of straights. He's going to overextend on the right straight, and Garbrandt's going to counter him with the check hook. I think so. We know Garbrandt's capable of it. Well, do we know actually? I don't know if he's capable of doing it anymore. If Garbrandt doesn't win this fight, though, I mean, obviously he's not done. The UFC will keep giving him low-level fights that he can win. They'll, bring back Clay Guida to fight him. But, this will be the end of Garbrandt being any bit serious, if you can even call him that anymore. Garbrandt beats Long Xiao by second-round knockout. Not confident in the slightest, though. Next up, we move on to the main card. It is a rematch of a Brazil versus Brazil fight in Brazil between Gregory Rodrigues and Bruno Ferreira. Again, they will be doing it once more after their initial matchup at UFC 283. It was the UFC debut for Bruno Ferreira. Took a fight on short notice to fight Rodrigues in Brazil, and he stiffs Rodrigues in the first round by knocking him out. Rodrigues is giving him, I don't know. The UFC's booking the fight again now that Rodrigues is in the top 15. Basically, so I think Rodrigues can get his win back, but here we are. The number 13th ranked middleweight in the world is fighting the number 15th ranked middleweight in the world. Rodrigues versus Ferreira, the rematch. Now, what has each fighter done since? Rodrigues beats Dennis Tululin, beats Brad Tavares, beats CLD Christian Leroy Duncan, gets knocked out in a great fight against Jared Cannonier, beats Jack Hermanson and stiffs him, coming off a huge unanimous decision victory over Roman Kopylov, and now here we are. Ferreira, since that fight, beats Phil Hawes. Lost to Nurgozhay Ruzboyev, lost to Phil Hawes expected, beats Phil Hawes expected because Phil Hawes doesn't have a chin. Beats Dustin Stulfsus by knockout expected. Lose to Abus Magomedov by submission, okay. Beats Arman Petrosyan by submission, by armbar. Submits Jackson McVeigh. And now coming off a win over Marvin Vettori. I'll be honest, before I went over these fights again, I forgot that fight happened. I forget Marvin's like as low as it possibly gets now in the UFC. To the point where, is he fighting for his contract in his next fight? I don't know. I like before like a couple hours ago, I forgot Vettori fought Ferreira. I'll be honest with you. It was a uneventful fight that Ferreira is doing more damage in. Marvin's doing his volume thing, obviously. You know, he's got a great chin. You know, you can't knock this dude out. But Ferreira's doing more damage, so obviously Ferreira wins the fight. So obviously that's why both these guys are ranked now. We know the grappling game Ferreira has with the multiple arm bars he's able to pull off. I think we're going to see him look to wrestle against Rodrigues. Hell, Rodrigues had Roman Kopylov shooting on him, so we shall see. But for the most part, I do believe this one's going to be contested on the feet. Will it end up like the first fight is the question, though. Now, that fight, I don't want to make excuses for Rodrigues, but he was preparing for Brad Tavares, and here comes an unknown Brazilian up-and-coming guy who hits he hits very hard on short notice in a fight that you're a big favorite in, and obviously Ferreira slumps him. Rodrigues was a minus 310 favorite in that initial bout in Brazil at UFC 283. Again, I don't think Rodrigues was really expecting what he got, and I don't know if entirely he was really taking Ferreira seriously, because he went out there and just, from what I got watching the fight, it looks like Rodrigues thinks he's going to walk right over him, and looks like he's just going to walk him down the entire fight until he's able to make him obviously crumble to strikes. That doesn't happen, right? Ferreira counter punches very well and obviously hits very hard and knocks out Rodrigues in that first round. I think Rodrigues taking Ferreira more seriously will win. I know Ferreira's coming off of beating Marvin Vettori. Guys, unfortunately, a lot of fighters can beat Marvin Vettori now. A lot of fighters outside of the top 15 can beat Marvin Vettori. Take an unranked middleweight, for example. By the way, Ferreira missed weight in his last fight, so there's that. But take an unranked middleweight, they could probably beat Marvin Vettori. Kyle Dawkins probably beats Marvin Vettori. Abus Magomedov probably beats Marvin Vettori. Murtabek Orbalai probably beats Marvin Vettori. Bo Nickel beats Marvin Vettori. Roman Kopylov probably beats Marvin Vettori, right? CLD beats Marvin Vettori. I'm not going to go too far into that, right? But a lot of fighters, unfortunately, now can just beat Marvin Vettori. He is a shell of his former self. What's more impressive to me is Rodrigues beating Hermanson and Kopylov in back-to-back fights. Yeah, he lost to Cannonier in a main event in the Apex. Okay, that was one hell of a fight where, yes, Rodrigues had Cannonier in trouble early, and obviously Cannonier, being a gritty veteran, wins the fight by fourth round knockout. It's going to happen to you, right? That was Rodrigues' big step-up fight. It's okay. I think taking Ferreira seriously a second time out, I think Rodrigues wins. I do believe both guys have gotten better since, but I think Rodrigues is a better striker still. I think Ferreira's best chance to win the fight is on the ground, but I don't think he's going to be able to take Rodrigues down, at least hold him down. So I think in a striking fight, I think Rodrigues is going to get it done. I'm going to go first round knockout for Gregory Rodrigues. Again, this is just a get back fight from that initial bout in Brazil. I think Rodrigues is going to exact his revenge. Again, both these guys hit very hard. I think Rodrigues, though, is going to find opportunities more than Ferreira. Ferreira, again, a short dude, 5'10", RoboCop 6'3". Again, that's why also I think Rodrigues just didn't take him seriously the first time out. He thought he was going to knock this short 5'10", 185er out. It was more like 5'9" out. He couldn't. This is going to be a serious RoboCop who's now ranked 13th in the world. He'll knock out Ferreira in the first round, in my opinion. RoboCop, again, gets his revenge. On to our next fight. It's an unction fight. Whoop! The Unks are fighting as Drew Dober takes on Michael Johnson in a main card fight in the year of our Lord 2026. But you know what? Honestly, I'm okay with it. Now, again, we were promised a big co-main event for this card. The UFC teased it. They put TBD versus TBD on the broadcast. I think it was at 324, I believe it was, or was it 325? Regardless, we were promised a big co-main event, and we got nothing. But we got Drew Dober versus Michael Johnson, so maybe everything's okay. What I will say here, two older guys, Johnson, 39? Johnson, 39, Dober, 37. It's a fight that I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet, I'll be honest, just because of how long both these guys have been in the UFC. But it should be a fun fight between two veterans, and someone's probably getting knocked out. So you know what? I can get behind it. Funny thing on Tapology, 50% of voters are taking Drew Dober, 50% of voters are taking Michael Johnson. It is split 50-50 right down the middle. It should be a very entertaining fight. I will say this, though. Michael Johnson's looking good at this point of his career. He's 24-19. He's won 3 consecutive bouts. He's 16-15 now in the UFC after being stiffed by Diego Ferreira back in May of 2023. He's won 3 in a row, a Darius Flowers decision victory, a knockout win over Ahmed Azaitar, and a victory over Daniel Zellhuber in New Orleans on a main card where he's a plus 400 dog. Now, beating Zellhuber doesn't hold the same weight after Bobby Green melted Daniel Zellhuber. I'm telling you, King Green still got some left in the tank. I should have pulled the trigger on Bobby Green last week. I should have taken him. I got really close to, but I hesitantly said, I'm not going to pick against the minus 450 favorite. Give me Zellhuber. I should have taken Bobby Green. It is what it is. Michael Johnson, though, beat Zellhuber, beat Azaitar prior to that, and he's putting together a run. Was supposed to fight at UFC 324 against Alexander Hernandez. That fight got canceled due to irregular line movement is the exact cause for that fight being canceled. I don't believe Alexander Hernandez is banned from the UFC. I think it just got out from his camp, at least, that he was injured going into the fight. So a lot of money went on to Michael Johnson. He became a huge favorite randomly during fight week. UFC pulled the fight. I don't think Hernandez is banned because I've already seen him in corners for fighters. He was cornering fighters last week in Houston. Obviously, he doesn't, if this was like a James Krause or an Isaac Dolgarian type ban, he wouldn't be allowed back in the arena anymore. So I actually think Hernandez is going to stick around. I think I think Hernandez kind of just pinned it on his camp, said, I assume Hernandez basically said, someone in my camp leaked this. I don't know what's going on. I think he dodged a bullet. Hernandez will be back in the UFC. But anyways, Michael Johnson gets this bout rescheduled now, and now he gets Drew Dober instead. Now, Drew Dober has a past of beating, let's just be honest. Drew Dober has a past, and it's a joke in the MMA community. I'm reporting on a joke. There's a joke that's going around that Drew Dober just beats a bunch of black fighters. Again, I think MMA Guru started this, but I just want to put that out there. He beat Terrence McKinney, he beat Bobby Green, right? You're going to see people joke that, he's going to knock out Michael Johnson just because, again, Michael Johnson's black. Okay. I don't think that's going to play too much of a factor. I'll tell you that. I think Michael Johnson's beating Drew Dober. Okay? Why? It's a couple things. It's the way Michael Johnson's fought recently and how good he has looked. But additionally, have we watched Drew Dober recently? Okay, so here's the thing. I ignored it with Drew Dober when he lost to Renato Moicano. Okay, again, that's a high-level guy. Dober, I think, was actually favored to win that fight. Or no, he wasn't, but it was a close fight on the odds. Dober loses that. Again, I'm not going to question that. He was on a winning streak going into it, whatever. Then John Silva. Well, I'm not going to question you losing to Silva, obviously. Fighting nerds, obviously, up-and-coming guy. That's okay. And then then Manuel Torres. Torres, obviously, knocks him out. Okay. And then Dober beats Kyle Prepolek. Great. But the thing is, again, Torres expected he was going to lose that fight. At least some people thought that. It was an even money fight where, who would take Drew Dober to win that fight? I don't know. The Kyle Prepolek fight was bad. Dober wins. And I want to get that out of the way. He wins. But, I don't know. Multiple penalties in that fight. Dober gets back into it in the third after multiple penalties on his end. Points taken, he's going to lose, and he goes for it in the third round. He knocks Prepolek out. Okay, so a lot to unpack there. One, Drew Dober shouldn't be that competitive with Kyle Prepolek. At least high-level Drew Dober, right? He's deducted a point in the third round because he kicked him, I think it was a kick, or was it a knee? I think it was a kick to the midsection, kick to the groin. But he's losing. He's down 2-0 going into the third round. He needed a finish. And yes, he gets the, well, was he down 2-0? It might have been 1-1. It's just, going into the fight, I expected Dober to easily finish Prepolek. And maybe that was, again, my expectation of Dober, thinking, oh, damn, like, he's the fight's not over yet. But Prepolek was finding success. Truthfully, it's probably 1-1 going to the third. It's probably 1-1. But, man, Dober, everything gets hit with. He's going, like, you can tell. Dober's affected by every hard shot Prepolek throws. The chin is obviously gone. The knockout lost to Manuel Torres, Frivola knocking him out, and that's, again, what happens when you have so many fights. He's 28-15. Johnson's had a million fights, too. We know his chin's not entirely there either, but I would say the Johnson chin is better than the Dober chin at this point. And Michael Johnson continues to look really good. Back-to-back fights with knockdowns against Zaitar and Zellhuber, and I get it, beating Zellhuber is not the biggest deal anymore, but Johnson continues to look good. Hell, date back to that Jamie Mullarkey fight where they robbed Johnson. He knocked down Mullarkey, and they gave the fight to Mullarkey back in the Apex a while ago. I like Johnson a lot here. And I'll tell you this, I think Michael Johnson is knocking Drew Dober out. Dober, again, was not responding well to the big power shots Kyle Prepolek was throwing. Prepolek's never really been UFC level, and he was finding a lot of success and damaging and hurting Drew Dober. I think Michael Johnson's going to hurt Drew Dober as well. In the year of our Lord 2026, I'm taking Michael Johnson to knock out Drew Dober in the first round. Again, I just don't think Dober is that great anymore. I think his chin's gone. And if he wins, maybe I'm going to start believing this mythical fighter who's now would be McKinney, Bobby Green, and Michael Johnson. No way. We're just proving this tonight. Michael Johnson, first round knockout over Drew Dober. On to our feature bout, we move to a matchup now in the bantamweight division. Rob Font takes on Raul Rosas Jr. as the UFC continues, obviously, to try to push Raul Rosas Jr. to the moon. And people forget, man, this dude's a marauder. No, he's 21. Raul Rosas is still 21 years of age. He's not hitting his prime for another 4 years at the very least. So I will say, I know Rosas, coming off the winner against Morales, Rosas has been a little overhyped. And the UFC obviously is very, very big on Rosas. They want Rosas to succeed, obviously, because he was on the Contender Series at 17 years of age and made Jay Perrin look like a fool when he fought him at 18 way back when. But the guy's still only 21 years of age. And now he's fighting Rob Font, who is, yes, I think still ranked, actually. Let me make sure that Rob Font's still ranked. Yes, ranked 13th in the bantamweight division. Is a huge spot for Rosas to get ranked at 21 years of age. It's impressive. Now, Rob Font, again, I don't know what he is at 38 years of age. He's getting older. Looked like he was slowing down a little bit in the David Martinez fight. Looked good enough in the John Matsumoto fight, but I will tell you, so many fighters have had success wrestling Rob Font, where this fight appears to me that it is just made for Rosas to win. And I say that with the utmost respect for all parties involved here. When I view this fight, it just appears to me, yeah, it's made out for Rosas to get it. Because we've seen all these troubles Font's had with wrestlers as of late. Look at his last 5 fights. What does every single opponent Rob Font faced do in these last 5? They all wrestle him. Sandhagen, I know Sandhagen did it because he had a torn bicep, but Sandhagen, who obviously great striker, out-wrestles Font for 25 minutes. Again, Dana was okay with it because, again, Sandhagen still took the fight with a torn bicep. Sandhagen out-wrestles him, has 20 minutes of control, 7 for 7 on takedowns, significant strike tally is 34-9 in that fight, but the important number is 7 for 7 on takedowns for Sandhagen. There is zero resistance to the takedowns that Sandhagen gets on Font. Then Font fights Davison Figueiredo. Figueiredo 4 for 7 on takedowns, it turns the tide in that fight. Font beats Kyler Phillips, but Phillips obviously is just looking to wrestle, so Font wins because he does damage. John Matsumoto, I thought it was the right call giving it to Font because damage-based scoring, but Matsumoto 7 for 10 on takedowns. And then his last fight against David Martinez, there is no wrestling. Martinez just beats him on the feet. Martinez obviously now coming off a win over Chito Vera. Chito Vera should probably be cut from the UFC. It's the same thing every single fight. Anyways, my point with all this is, a 38-year-old Rob Font, okay. If Rosas is able to take him down like everyone's been able to, I have a feeling one of two things are going to happen. Either Rosas holds him down, or Rosas is able to find that submission. It'll likely be the first one. We haven't seen Rosas just straight up go out there and maul a guy and submit him since, I don't know, he beat Ricky Turcios back in Louisville, Kentucky in June of 2024. You're likely going to see Turcios wrestle and just hold on. Which, you know what? Get your win on a main card of a pay-per-view, and you don't want to lose on a main card like he did the only other time he's been on a UFC main card of a pay-per-view when he lost to Christian Rodrigues back in, was that New York? That was Miami back at UFC 287 in April of 23. I think this fight's going to be extremely boring. I'll tell you that. I think Rosas, what he specializes in, we've seen this in his last couple bouts, he'll take you down and hold you down. Remember when he beat Oreki Long at the Sphere and asked Dana for 50 Gs? I mean, it's a worn out gimmick. And yes, there's a lot of fatigue around Raul Rosas, I will say. But, you know, what he does well is that he wrestles and he can hold you down. The Vince Morales fight, it's not that great. Raul Rosas, though, at 10 minutes of control, loses I think it's the third round he loses, but the first 2 rounds, yeah, it's just dominant wrestling. Morales doesn't get any offense off. So yeah, Rosas wins. It's a steep step up in competition. I'll tell you this, I believe Rosas is winning. The pick's Rosas by decision, but the problem for Rosas is this is the perfect entry-level fight, which is great. Perfect entry-level fight for the top 15. The problem is now, who does he beat in the top 15 from here? You're stuck. You're in the top 15 now. Who's above you in the rankings? Peyton Talbot? You know, we joke about Talbot, but Talbot beats Rosas easily, in my opinion. Easily. Vinicius Oliveira, bad last fight. Oliveira beats... Maybe Rosas could get that one. That's a 50-50 for me. Who's above him? That David Martinez? Maybe he could beat Marlon Vera if they keep Vera around. That actually might be the next fight. But Mario Bautista? We expect Rosas to be competitive with Mario Bautista? That's the problem. You now get in the top 15. These are only big-time matches from here on out. And you're 21 in your, 6th UFC fight? 7th UFC fight? And now you're stuck fighting nothing but the top dogs from here on out? That's a problem. Again, perfect spot for him to get him in that territory to be a top guy. But now what do you do from here for Raul Rosas? I just don't know. And also, again, Rob Font's 38. Striking doesn't look horrible, but if the fight goes any way that I think it's going to, this one's not going to be on the feet for long. Rosas is going to look to get the takedown early, and Rosas is going to look to hold Rob Font for a majority of this fight and not allow Rob Font to do any damage. And also, I got to mention, the New England cartel does nothing but lose fights. We saw it again yesterday. Shocker, Moutinho loses. Quinones, he kind of sucked for not getting a knockout, but whatever. And obviously, Angel Pacheco loses to Santiago Luna. And I get it, it's a different era of New England cartel fighting, the old era with Font and Cater actually used to win fights. But, man, New England cartel never wins anything. Raul Rosas beats Rob Font by unanimous decision in the biggest fight of his career. Next up, we go to the co-main event. This isn't the fun co-main event I was promised. Oh, sure. Caio Borralho takes on Reinier de Ridder in the co-main event. It's a good fight. It's just, it doesn't scream co-main event of a pay-per-view, though. Of a BMF card, right? Again, like, this is good. Like, I like the fight. This would be a, Apex main event. You could argue this. No, I would put this at a fight night main event in Brazil. Yeah, 100%. But a co-main of a pay-per-view? I don't know, man. I would have liked to see the Van Tyra fight here, but I get it. They don't do actual title fights on BMF cards. Reinier de Ridder and Caio Borralho. So here's the thing. Reinier de Ridder's stock's never been lower since entering the UFC. Was supposed to take on Anthony Fluffy Hernandez in a fight now that we know how Sean Strickland fought Hernandez. I think de Ridder would have beat Fluffy. The knee to the body, it would have been right there. We saw him hurt Whitaker time in and time out. The knee to the body, that would have destroyed Fluffy Hernandez. I think de Ridder would have won. But instead, de Ridder gets Brendan Allen, and he just gives up. It's the truth. He gave up. He was too tired. And I'm not saying like he didn't try. He 100% tried. Brendan Allen outlasted Reinier de Ridder. After that first round in Canada, I'm thinking, okay, wait, de Ridder's, okay, I'm thinking, we took de Ridder. I'm like, okay, yeah, he's going to win. Like, he out-wrestled Allen in the first round. Nothing really happened, but, I was thinking, okay, matter of time before de Ridder finally, or eventually gets that submission, or he just rides us out the entire fight, like, kind of how Fluffy did against Brendan Allen. Second round happens, okay, tide's turning. Third round happens, oh, wait, Brendan Allen's fully in control. Fourth round, oh, Brendan Allen's dominating. And then, obviously, de Ridder doesn't even make it off the stool going into the fifth. And yeah, de Ridder was down 3-1. He was not going to get a finish nor a 10-8 round in the fifth round, so he's going to lose regardless. It's such a bad visual, though. It's a horrible visual for obviously a former, double champion, won championship, and a very, credentialed and great fighter. But there's all your stock. It's gone. De Ridder was undefeated in the UFC. He had beaten Gerald Meerschaert. He had beaten Kevin Holland by submission. He had TKO'd Bo Nickel. And he had beaten Robert Whitaker in a 5-round main event, which could have gone either way, but whatever. Whitaker, by the way, why is Whitaker going up to 205? That is the worst decision Whitaker can make. You thought he was chinny at 85? Yeah, go fight at 205. Why? Well, sure, it's a weak weight class, but realistically, who the hell is Robert Whitaker going to fight at 205 pounds? Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked here, but like a legitimate thought. Who the hell are they going to give Whitaker in his first fight at 205 pounds? What's a winnable fight? Jamal Hill? Maybe? But like, Are we taking Whitaker to beat Jamal Hill? I know Hill keeps losing, but I don't know about that. Maybe loser of Dominic Reyes, Johnny Walker, but those guys hit hard though. It's just, man, I don't like these fights for him. I don't like it at all. Maybe give him Blachowicz. Maybe you got to get a former champion to win somehow. Maybe that's the fight. Blachowicz, Whitaker. I could see it. If they finally go to Poland, which they're talking about, send Whitaker to Poland to fight Blachowicz in the main event. Potentially Blachowicz retirement fight. That's what I would do. Anyways, Borralho versus De Ridder here. De Ridder, again, stock can never be lower. Borralho coming off the loss to Nassourdine Imavov, who maybe is fighting for a championship, maybe not fighting for a championship. What's going on at 85? Can someone tell me where the champion's at? Where's Hamzat? He tweets all the time, and he doesn't fight. What happened to kill everybody, eh? You don't fight anymore. Strickland just won. You have Imavov. DDP was one of the greatest middleweight champions ever. But no, just have this guy who doesn't fight. It's just horrible. It's so ridiculous. Anyways, Imavov beats Borralho, main event in France, 5-round main event. Honestly, a pretty boring fight, I'll tell you that. Nothing really happens. Again, it's not a bad fight, but Imavov just wins. Like, Imavov wins every single round, I thought. Borralho, you can maybe give him one, but it's all Imavov the entire fight. You can give Borralho one round, which would probably be the last round, I think. But Imavov easily beats up on Borralho. Borralho's not able to get a takedown. Here's the thing. Who will be the first one to shoot in this fight? If anyone. Does anyone shoot? I don't know. I think it's going to be Borralho, right? I think it has to be after the success Brendan Allen saw. But that was a 5-round fight. And if you're Borralho, okay, do you start going in the second round? Do you start going after the takedown in the second after you kind of feel out what you can get in the first? Because obviously the De Ridder gas tank's not anywhere near what we thought it was. But again, different, right? He went 5 rounds against Whitaker and tried to go 5 against Allen. A 5-round fight striking is way easier, with all due respect, than 5 rounds wrestling, right? You can make fun of De Ridder for quitting, but that pace on the ground was, it's a hard fight to fight. Like, the example I'll always use, Chris Weidman versus Omari Akhmedov. Random ass fight. But that was in the Apex and a co-main event where Weidman got a win back after, his getting knocked out problems, right? Anyways, Weidman wins, and people laughed at the fight. But when he beat Akhmedov and he was, sucking for air in his post-fight interview back when they did, they had to interview him on a TV screen, I understood it. Because Weidman and Akhmedov wrestled for 15 minutes straight. And yes, they were beat to hell at the end of the fight. And they were, bent over, just completely gassed. But again, wrestling at that pace for 15 minutes is brutal. So imagine De Ridder and Allen doing it for 25 or 20. So I'm not too down on De Ridder. The thing is, what if Borralho makes him do it again? That's my question. And Borralho does it in the second round. And yes, again, De Ridder struggled in a 20-minute fight, but this is 15. But again, all Borralho's got to do is win rounds 2 and 3. And then the question is, what the hell happens in the first round if it's a striking fight? I think I have to favor Borralho. I don't know. De Ridder's got that great knee, and it's a phenomenal knee up the middle to the body. Borralho did beat the crap out of Jared Cannonier on the feet. Man. I'm split. I'm going to go Cairo Borralho. Just the way I break it down, there are multiple pathways for victory for Borralho. Do we really expect Reinier De Ridder to submit Cairo Borralho? I don't think so. Do we think De Ridder can out-wrestle him for 2 rounds? Yeah, it's a possibility. Do we think Borralho can just straight up outstrike him? Maybe. He's going to really have to work the body. You got to think that camp fighting nerds in Borralho know, okay, he's going to work that. And that's what beat Whitaker and beat Bo Nickel, that knee up the middle. Got to think they're aware of that. They're going to try to take away De Ridder's best weapon. De Ridder is 35 now. I'm going to go Borralho winning by decision. It's obviously the outcome the UFC wants, by the way. So give me Cairo Borralho. On to our main event for the BMF title. It's the rematch, Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira. Again, BMF on the line. 2 of the most winningest fighters in UFC history. I'm going to get the official tally here, but the winner of this fight will move into second place all-time in UFC wins, only behind Jim Miller. Now, if it's Max Holloway, he will then go into a 3-way tie with Neil Magny and Charles Oliveira for second most wins. If Oliveira wins, he will go into sole possession, obviously, of second most wins in UFC history at 25. So Holloway looking for win 24, Oliveira looking for win 25 in the UFC. A massive fight, though, obviously, in the main event. Huge for title positioning as well. Obviously, the lightweight division is a little backed up because Ilya obviously has not fought. We expect Ilya to fight at the White House against Justin Gaethje. Dana, by the way, said the White House announcement's coming this week, so we should know pretty quickly and pretty soon. But I'm expecting Ilya and Gaethje at the White House. I don't think Arman's getting a title fight after. We just saw what happened at Real American Freestyle yesterday, fighting it. What are we doing? Like, Arman's trying his hardest. Is he trying to get cut? I don't know what's going on with Arman Tsarukyan. Regardless, though, dude's a madman. Anyways, they're not going to give Arman the next shot, and I have to imagine the winner of this fight is next for Tsarukyan. I gotta think so, right? Whether that be Holloway or Oliveira, I know they don't want to put the BMF title on a fight between these guys and Arman, but there's really nothing else oh, wait, never mind. I actually know what they're going to do. No, scrap that. Paddy's going to fight Arman. The winner of this fight's fighting Benoit. Yeah, 100%. Never mind. Because it was going to be Hooker if it was not Benoit. It's going to be Benoit. Never mind. Winner of this fight's going to fight Benoit Saint-Denis. I would argue, they keep main eventing BMF in pay-per-views. I could say I was thinking maybe they main event this in France on a fight night. But no, it'll probably be fight night main event. They do two pay-per-views in July. Probably the second pay-per-view in July will be the main event winner, obviously, here versus Benoit Saint-Denis, I got to imagine. And they obviously want to cash in, I think, on Arman versus Paddy. Or maybe they do Paddy versus the winner of this fight. But actually, they might sell Paddy being a BMF because of the Gaethje fight. Regardless, Holloway versus Oliveira, how does this fight play out? For the first time ever, we are going to see a fighter competing for the BMF championship who is going to be an engaging grappler, right? Guys, I don't think it's a secret. Charles Oliveira needs to grapple. He needs to get this fight down. If he stands with Max Holloway, he's not going to win. I will be damned if he does. If Charles Oliveira knocks out Max Holloway or just straight up outstrikes Holloway for 25 minutes, this will be the most incredible thing Charles Oliveira has done in his career. And that includes him winning the world championship and defending it after getting knocked down in 3 straight bouts against Chandler, Poirier, and Gaethje, right? I know he won the title against Chandler, but you get my point, right? That would be the most remarkable thing he's ever done in his career if he straight up just outstrikes Max Holloway. Simply put, it's not going to happen. Charles needs to get this fight down. Now, Oliveira coming off that massive win over Mateusz Gamrot, right? He loses to Ilya in June, gets he takes the short notice matchup against Gamrot. We were all questioning it when it happened. It was supposed to be Fiziev first. Gamrot steps in. I'll be honest with you, I took Gamrot to win. I thought Gamrot was going to be able to get it done. Oliveira gets Gamrot down, takes him down, and obviously gets the rear naked choke in the second round. He is also dangerous on the ground, obviously. It's just what Bronx is. The question ultimately, I can break this fight down so many ways. I'm just how good Max Holloway is. Look at the Dustin Poirier fight where, by the way, Poirier knocks down Justin Gaethje. Well, he didn't knock down Justin Gaethje way back when they fought, but Max Holloway. Poirier knocks down Holloway in the second round. Holloway is winning every single minute of the fight with the exception of that final minute in the second, right? If Holloway doesn't get dropped at the very end of the second round, minute left to go in the second round, Holloway's winning 5 rounds to nothing. That's the only round, that was the only glimmer of hope that Dustin Poirier had in the entire 25 minutes was that knockdown in the second round where he was on top of Holloway, and obviously Holloway knocked Poirier down in the first, Poirier gets the knockdown in the second, but then obviously Max, really locked in from there and obviously won 4 rounds to 1, right? In New Orleans, obviously Poirier's retirement fight. Okay, here's the thing. I can talk all about that I can talk all about Max Holloway, how great his boxing is. We get it. It's just yes, Charles is not a bad boxer, but it all starts with the grappling. It all starts with the threat of the grappling. And how does Oliveira look to get this fight down the first time? Are we going to see, legitimately, it's not crazy to say, are we going to see Charles try to pull guard? Are we going to see Charles, likely a body lock? Are we going to see, a trip or a throw from Oliveira? That's the bigger question to me, is how does Oliveira, how does he do it? How does he attempt to do it first? And can Max keep it on the feet? Historically, Max Holloway is a really good defensive wrestler. Max Holloway has an 83% takedown defense rate so far in the UFC. Last guy to take him down was Ilya. Ilya went 2 for 2 on takedowns. People forget, though, just how good of a wrestler Ilya Topuria is when he needs to. Last guy to purely win a fight on grappling against Max Holloway, actually Volk, technically. The fight was very much contested on the feet, the second fight, but Volk did win those rounds and edged out the very close fight the second time around with the takedowns. No fighter, though, has been straight up able to just purely out-wrestle Max Holloway to victory. I could be mistaken one, other than Conor McGregor, which is a very random shout-out, and very random case, but that's the truth. McGregor's up 2-0 going into the third, and does wrestle his way to a round 2 win. He wins the first round of the feud against Max Holloway, but if you go back, Shogun Sonnen undercard, Conor McGregor out-wrestles Max Holloway, and purely does it in the second half of the second round and the entire third round to beat Holloway, who, again, was young, inexperienced at the time, but, a dangerous fighter, and obviously McGregor wrestles him. It's really the only time Conor has ever done that. But that's my thing. That's the last time Max has been purely out-wrestled and lost. It was against Conor McGregor back in August of 2013. It's been 13 years. Now, obviously, there's no fighter like Oliveira in terms of jiu-jitsu. Obviously, you can say he's the greatest jiu-jitsu practitioner in UFC history. He's the most decorated, at least 17 submission wins in the UFC. He holds the record for a reason. He's just that good. Can he do it against Max Holloway, who, again, is almost, I wouldn't say he's unstoppable in terms of, trying to get him down, trying to submit him, but no one's done it so far, at least in a very long time. Last time Holloway was subbed back in UFC 143 against Dustin Poirier in his UFC debut. That was a very obvious, hole in Holloway's game early in his career was his wrestling and his grappling. Again, Dustin Poirier and, Conor McGregor look to that, but I just don't know how Max is going to, fare with it now. I don't think he's got much of a problem. We've seen Max against some good wrestlers and he's been okay, right? Frankie Edgar got a world title fight against Max Holloway. I know that's back in 2018 now, but Max was okay in that fight, 2019, and Frankie only got him down once. Brian Ortega, obviously, T-City, look at the jiu-jitsu. I get it, he's not Charles Oliveira, but Max was fine. I just don't see how Charles is able to keep him down, get him down in the first place. And it only takes one, right? Look at Chandler fight was a knockout. Gaethje fight was a knockout too. Well, submission, but via the knockdown. Look at the Dustin Poirier fight. Yes, Charles had a knockdown in that fight too, but gets the body lock and subs him. Takes the back, climbs the back, obviously, straight backpacks him and gets the sub. I mean, yes, he can do it against elite guys, elite strikers, and elite grapplers too, but I just haven't seen anybody do it against Max Holloway yet. And here's the thing, what's going to be harder to overcome, which this might be a hot take, but what's going to be harder to overcome? Max Holloway staying out of precarious situations in the grappling to allow his striking to completely flow, or Charles Oliveira staying out of precarious situations in the striking to get to his grappling. Yeah, it's going to be more difficult for Oliveira. He looked good in his return against Garbrandt, but that's Mateusz Garbrandt, who's not that dangerous on the feet compared to maybe the best boxer in UFC history, at least definitely in the featherweight division. Holloway's dangerous, man. He is. I will say, there were points in that Poirier fight where I'm watching and I'm thinking, oh man, Max does not look like he once was. He's 34 now, and obviously Holloway's taken all this damage. This is his 32nd UFC fight. He's climbing the ranks, of course, and all-time fights and all-time wins in the UFC. There's a reason for that, right? He's gaining records now for this. But I think he's going to pass. Likely he'll pass the all-time fight time tonight. If the fight goes into the championship rounds, he will. He'll pass RDA's record. But Holloway's obviously going to break that eventually, right? Max is getting older, and there were points in that Poirier fight where I'm looking at Max and I'm like, oh man, he looks good, but if he fought that version of Dustin Poirier years ago, that version of Dustin Poirier is getting completely put away in the third round. Can he put away Oliveira? Oliveira's chin's always been iffy. It's been good enough, and he's been able, that's Charles' whole thing, right? His chin has been, iffy, but again, he can withstand that. He'll get knocked down, and he'll keep fighting. Got knocked down again. The three fight run was just remarkable. Knocked down against Chandler, knocked down twice against Gaethje, knocked down against Poirier. He wins all of them. I don't think he's going to knock down Max Holloway, because Holloway's still, again, I saw the cracks against Poirier. I did, in terms of his defensive striking, right? I wouldn't expect that version of Poirier to knock down Holloway, at least that version of Poirier that showed up last summer. But can Bronx do it? Again, if Charles does it, it's going to be purely precision-based, time-based, and also you're going to see Holloway, looking hands down, trying to, avoid, a clinch situation, and boom, Oliveira pops him. I just don't see it. I think Max is going to fight a really good fight here. This is a fight that Max has wanted for a very long time. After he beat Poirier, he was already talking about Oliveira right away, and that was before Oliveira fought, definitely before Oliveira fought Garbrandt. It was after Oliveira just lost to Ilya. I mean, Max has been wanting this fight for a minute. He finally gets it. He obviously won the first fight, but there's not much to talk about. Again, Charles injures his shoulder, a minute into the bout. So obviously Max wins, but not much to go off of there. I think Max is going to win again. I think he's going to. I think, once Charles isn't able to get that takedown, wasn't able to take the back or just drag the fight down, what does he have for Max? I think that I would not be shocked, though, if Charles is able to find the back and submit him through a standing rear naked choke. Legitimately is how I think he'd win. But I've yet to see anybody do that to Holloway since 2013. And, I haven't seen anybody just dominate Max in a wrestling game. In the wrestling game. Like, even when Volk got those takedowns against Max, they're for like 20 seconds. And yes, they were to the end of the round, but it's always been a struggle to take down Max Holloway and keep Max Holloway down. And with the boxing and the quickness and the speed of his hands, I just don't know how Charles is able to keep up in the striking game in terms of, okay, how do I'm going to keep up in the striking so I can get into range to obviously set up something with my jiu-jitsu and get the fight down or obviously try to take the back. I just think it's going to be extremely tough for Charles in this bout, and I have to go Max Holloway. And I think if Charles is not able to drag the fight down or obviously take a back or whatnot, he's stuck in a pure striking fight with Max blessed Holloway. I'm sorry to Charles. I don't think that's going to go very well if he does get stuck in this type of fight, which ultimately I think he's going to. That means I'm taking Max Holloway to knock him out. Max blessed Holloway, third round TKO against Charles Oliveira. This is going to be accumulation based. It's not going to be one-shot knockout like you did against Justin Gaethje. I think once Charles can't get the fight into a jiu-jitsu range and make it into a jiu-jitsu fight basically, or grappling match, Max is going to break him. Max Holloway, third round TKO against Charles Oliveira. It's not going to be whether, Charles quits or not. No, that narrative's been obviously proven wrong at this point. It's just sometimes Max Holloway's too much. And that's what's going to happen this weekend. Max Holloway defends the BMF championship for the second time, TKOing Charles Oliveira in the rematch in the third round. Folks, thank y'all for watching our UFC 326 predictions. If you have not yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video, and make sure to comment if you disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back on Thursday for our best bets for this card, and next week as well for another UFC card. They're going every single week for the next 2.5 months, I think. We've got Kevin Vallejos and Josh Emmett in the main event from the Apex, but again, best bets later this week. You're not going to want to miss that. Folks, thank y'all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more, and Mamba forever.